just in case? Excellent. Look, a very warm welcome back to session number 2. So, it'll be interesting to hear your reflections, both on what we covered on session number 1, but also any observations you've had in the last period. It's just Claudia coming in, sorry. In terms of noticing that leadership, management, how each of them adds particular value. You might have had observations as to where you saw management and maybe you thought leadership would have been, a response would have been more helpful, or indeed vice versa. So we're just going to take 60 seconds to connect in with each of you around your reflections on what we covered in session number 1, and then what has come up for you in the past week as you've observed teams, observed yourself, observed other leaders, and anything really relevant around the management leadership kind of continuum. So who'd like to jump in first? I'm going to give like 20 seconds to everybody in the room.
I can go first if you like.
Thanks, Angus.
I suppose my reflection, I found it really interesting finding or learning about the differences between management and leadership skills. And that's something I've been looking at probably in terms of myself in job management through the week, focusing on trying to do some more of those leadership skills rather than just management skills, which I think most of us probably have fairly well down pat.
Pretty good mastery of. Thank you so much. And so as you think about applying more of the leadership in a job management role, what's been just one aspect of leadership that you've been paying attention to or trying to give some more focus to?
Probably getting feedback from others in the team.
Great.
Yeah.
Super. Thank you. Lovely insight. Let's build on that. Let's move to the next person.
I can go.
Great.
I think what I've taken away from last week's session is from the leadership side, just to check in or have those conversations with people on your team, whether you're in that formal PM role or not, just get the gauge on how people are doing and keep those conversations going so people have the opportunity to raise something.
Great.
What I'm trying to keep in mind going forward. Not saying I have done all of that, but
yeah,
keeping that in mind. Yeah.
But super, so 2 things in that. Decoupling it from a hierarchical leadership role, and also being really present just on day-to-day interactions, both noticing what's going on for people and actually just checking in that informal way. Yeah, that's super.
Right.
And maybe for a bonus point, to the extent that you've done that at all, have you been able to identify that the act of doing that has brought some increased value for you, for the person, for the situation?
Yeah, I think it just has given people a chance to talk about any frustrations or that they may have about a certain project, or even things on the team. Give them that opportunity to have that discussion, and sometimes just having that discussion can give some relief to people.
Yeah, that's super. Thanks so much, Leanne. Let's build on it.
I'm happy to jump in next. Oh,
yeah.
Unless someone else wants to go.
No, you go.
All right. For me, it's mostly I've just become a lot more aware of that difference between leadership and management, and have been noticing it a lot more now. While previously to me it used to be kind of all lumped into one. I'm definitely a lot more aware and noticing when good leadership is happening. Around the softer skill sides, checking in with people, taking responsibility for challenges and work issues and stuff like that. So that's been really interesting for me.
Yeah, super. And just again, for a bonus point, when you think about how that is different from what management is paying attention to, what are a couple of the things that have really stuck in your mind around the focus of management?
The focus of management. So I guess like we're so busy at the moment. It's resourcing and schedule is just being
Yep.
jammed down everyone's throats at the moment.
Yeah.
But I've really seen a few people, and they're not even, our BGL does it, but it's a lot of just PMs or PDs and stuff, like, who have been taking the time to check in and see how people are doing and stuff like that. So that's really kind of stood out to me, where previously I would have lumped that all in under management. To me, it's really showing those leadership skills.
Yeah, great. So even in the midst of people being under pressure around scheduling and resourcing, it's how do you carve out a space to actually notice some of this other stuff around it. Thank you, Adam.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I can
I
go
might
next.
jump in next,
Yeah.
if that's okay. We had our global town hall yesterday where we got an update from Ashley and others around the business on what's been going on. And I think with the project that we've been doing as part of this on engagement as well, like, we're reading about leadership versus management a lot, but I think I saw it very prominent in that a lot of the topics spoken about weren't just about the KPIs and, like, what's our utilization, what's our profit, like they, I think, were a few years ago. There was a lot more discussion on mental health and diversity and, like, other aspects that form a big part of our day-to-day lives, with work being so much of that, have become a much clearer focus and very important.
Yeah, so you've seen an increased space, right? Even in that town hall around what are the items that are getting attention, yeah? And if we think about the leadership is about, how people are experiencing change, how they're managing themselves through a variety of challenges, the need for leaders to pay attention to that, as well as the KPIs. Yeah, thanks, Kelsey. Others?
Joanna here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I guess just one thing that happened on a project of mine where my field person got an email from a client, and the email was sort of targeting her. And I felt that she's going to feel, I put myself in her shoes, and as a leader, I gave her a call to check in with her and see how she's feeling, validating her feelings, but also, just talking her out of the situation that she's put herself in, and finding solutions and moving forward. So I think maybe previously I wouldn't have taken that time to sort of check in with a colleague and talk about the feelings and the emotions that come with the job. So I think that was a really good
What a
outcome.
beautiful example. So a manager approach to that would have looked at the technical issue raised by the client and how do we fix it and get it back on track, and perhaps underneath the iceberg not paid attention to those, like you say, range of feelings and reactions. And to the extent that we ignore that, of course, they remain and they do impact things like engagement as that person moves forward. So that's a super example. Thanks for sharing, Joanna.
Amanda here. We had a situation this week where we actually won a fairly sizable variation from Department of Defence, and two people, we've got a fairly small team, and two people in our team working on defence sort of went into panic mode as to, how are we going to deliver this, sort of talking about recruiting, doing authority to recruit, came to me. And we'd recently done quarterly reviews where we talked about where they'd like to be going and what sort of work they'd like to be doing. And so I pushed it back to them to, let's just take a breather and let's just have a look at the work and what's required and where you guys have said, where you wanted to be heading. And you guys have a think about how you can deliver this. And so anyway, it was just taking a moment to task them with that.
Yeah.
And then they sort of drove the process to work out, they came up with a bit of a breakdown of the tasks and how this might fit with where they'd like to head with their careers. And as a result, they've come back and said, we can absorb this and we want to do it.
Amazing.
So it was a good outcome. Yeah.
an amazing outcome. And so the leadership piece there is inviting them to become co-creators, right? In how we think about this dilemma. The technical approach would be to look at it just as a resourcing piece. Yeah. Can we give it a green light or does it get a red light? Yeah. So you brought so much more value around that. Love the example. Let's continue.
I can probably jump in if no one
Thanks,
else is
David.
going.
Yep.
I think sort of going back a bit to what Adam said, I think it's been a really busy week here as well. And I think one thing I've noticed is when things are sort of stressful and there's a lot of time pressures and stuff, leadership is what makes you feel better. It's sort of more comforting. Often that behavior is what you really need, whereas management tends to do the opposite. It's really not that helpful to have people ticking items off a list when you're kind of stressed and under pressure. So yeah, I think I've just really noticed that. And some people just do it as part of their nature, and it's always trying to relate to what you're doing, listening and understanding and providing guidance and support. And yeah, that I'll take that every time, I guess. Obviously management's important and maybe that's the follow-up, but yeah, that's one thing that has stood out to me.
Yeah, it's a great point. So obviously the management is going to be super important in what you and Adam have been talking about. However, management without the leadership, I think your point is, exacerbates that feeling of overwhelm and stress. Whereas actually bringing the leadership piece in allows people to take much more, to take a pause, to take a breath, to see it for what it is. And then following that up with the management allows people to go with it. Yeah. So yeah, super insight.
Yeah, I'm happy to go next.
Thanks,
so
Tony.
we've got a particularly tricky client on one of our projects at the moment. We are very short on resources, so everybody's under huge amounts of pressure. And our client does try to make it personal, and why haven't you done this, and why haven't you done that, and what have you done about it? And ultimately, the one thing we can't do is clone our staff yet to create more people. So what I did this week was I just said to one particular team member who's just really under a lot of pressure, and I said, look, why don't we get one of the people who are actually doing the work into the meeting and let them explain to the client what we have done and what we can do with the resources that we've got. And it's not that we're ignoring your requests. We're not deliberately trying to slow things down, but there's only so much we can do with the resources we've got. And that really helped. It was almost like diffusing the situation by bringing in an extra person, and somebody else was telling him the story. And yeah, it was just, as you know, sometimes you just need to change the dynamic, bring in an extra person, and it all sort of seems to calm down a little bit.
Thank you. And was that extra person, was that a person from the client side? Is that what you mean?
No, from our side.
From your side. And so that extra person, just to help me understand, what was their purpose?
So one of the engineers that's working on the job, but doesn't normally speak to the client, but
I see.
Just in terms of having just sort of the project management meeting, to bring in one of the technical people to say, look, this is the progress on the chart, but actually this is what we've done, and this is how we're doing it. And yes, it is slow because we don't have these extra resources, but I think it almost just gave him an assurance that
built a trust and a confidence.
Yeah.
So it's a lovely example that we're going to talk about in session number 3. An influence opportunity, which is a key characteristic of a leadership approach. So you could argue the simple act of bringing that person in who was working on the job changed the dynamics and the narrative that the client had around how you were dealing with this piece of work.
Yeah,
lovely, Claudia. Excellent. Beautiful examples here. Who's not shared yet? Thanks, John.
I can go. Yeah, so I sort of have these, I guess, daily battles with myself. I'm sort of filling the role of being a manager and a leader within a team of drafters and designers in the Philippines. And so it's difficult for me at sometimes to sort of know when to take on that leadership role and when to take on that management role. there are certainly times, where we're under a bit of pressure to deliver a certain task, and sometimes it can be easier for me to just complete the task myself.
Yeah.
So I'm sort of taking on that manager role, but I don't see any value in the development of any of the team members with doing that. So I do try and have that conversation after the fact to kind of give a bit of insight as to maybe come up with ideas and techniques that could help us in the future, sort of maybe speed up the process, improve on quality and those sorts of things. So I'm dealing with this whole, when to be a manager and when to be a leader, just on a day-to-day basis, really.
Yeah, I like your line, the daily battle within yourself, which I think is there for all of us, actually. The daily battle to be on the dance floor and on the balcony, yeah? And the struggle maybe because of what's going on externally, and also the struggle because what are the deep habits we have within us, right? And letting go of those. So makes complete sense. Yeah, thank you. A couple more people, I think, who haven't shared. Yes, Mitchell?
Yep. So just, backing off what a few people have said there before. So for me, the big takeaway with the leadership side is I guess the management side, I get so bogged down in the detail and it's controlling what you can within that bubble. But for me, the leadership side, it comes back to the people. So it's just, the listening side of things, asking questions, feedback. It's just, you got to put the people side of it at the forefront there sometimes.
Yeah. And what have you been present to within yourself around that?
It's just getting out of the details sometimes. If you're getting bogged down ticking the boxes, really that methodical way of doing things. And sometimes it's just sitting back, listening.
And being a little bit more fluid. Yeah, super. Thanks, Mitchell. Tim, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, sure. Sorry. I've actually been on break for the last 6 days, so I haven't.
Okay, that's fair enough, Tim.
Much about management leadership, but I think a big thing, the project I'm working on down here is getting towards the end. It's pretty stressful, and there's a lot going on, a lot of time pressure. And I think it was last Wednesday, actually, after this meeting, the boss kind of came down and then the kind of the middle level management wasn't around. They kind of had a big chat about mostly to do with mental health, to be honest, and just kind of clarifying that the project's actually going well, and obviously everyone's stressed, but there's things to be happy about and be proud of and stuff. And I think I guess the biggest thing we're trying to push is to reach out if you are having mental health struggles or anything, or check in on your teammates. So I think, and I hope that was sort of an example of leadership, I guess.
Yeah, I think so. I think it was
high above, and
I think it was, Tim. Thank you. Thank you.
My example to talk about, to be honest.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's really good. Anybody else I've missed now? Marcia, have you had a chance?
I haven't had a chance yet. Sorry, I was a little bit late. In reflection, since our last meeting, I've been more aware, I've almost been saying to myself, am I managing or am I leading? Trying to just identify my role at the time. And I've found myself obviously doing both, but trying to be more forward in challenging the status quo or putting my view forward. I think often I can let things lie a bit if it feels a little bit too hard and it's not something that's will create a big issue. I might not put my opinion forward so I'm trying to do that more.
And bring more of yourself kind of into the piece. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, well, that's super. So we're going to build on that now. And we're going to explore the question today. What are the kinds of things that can get in the way of us leading and managing effectively? Because remember, both of them are important. They just serve different functions. Leadership is more required in complexity and change, and management more in terms of kind of the stable ongoing. Even though it might be challenging, it's kind of still the bread and butter of what we're actually doing. And so I want to share with you a slide. We're going to be talking about these two things today. One is how I put my foot in it, and the other is my hot button. So interesting to think about this first one, what it means by how I put my foot in it. But what it generally is meaning is we all have aspects of ourselves that get in the way of our success, or that catch us out, or that trip us up. And they are usually behavioral patterns that get in the way of our success. So you guys have done a good bit of work on emotional intelligence, and you have learned about the importance of self-awareness. So in a moment, we're actually going to spend some time hearing from each of you around how is it that you actually put your foot in things. And we're going to talk to you about, ask you to share, how does that potentially get in the way of your success as a leader? So I'm going to give you just 20 seconds to think about what is it that you do that puts your foot in it? Sometimes those people who live with us are very much better able to help us identify what those things are. So if you've ever had feedback from, family, sometimes that's helpful also in naming how you can put your foot in it in terms of work as well. So it could be something you do, but you wish you didn't do. Maybe a mistake that you can habitually make. An approach that gets you in trouble. An action you repeat, but you shouldn't. Good, we've got one coming already. And that's what we call, shooting ourselves in the foot.
Yeah, I'm happy to go.
Great. So, okay, well, let's throw it open. We'll start with those who are ready, and then we're going to ask everybody just to share it so that we can actually kind of get that into the room. Claudia, you ready to go?
Yeah, I don't say no. I don't like to disappoint people, and then I find myself with a million tasks on my list because I don't say no.
Excellent. Really, really good example. So can't say no. And what's the upside of that for you, Claudia?
The upside, I don't, well, the upside is that, yeah, I'm trying to think what the upside might be.
There's going to be an upside or you wouldn't be doing it. I'm going to give all of us a hint. Even for the things that shoot us in the foot, the whole theory is we are the way we are, because in some way it kind of works for us, even though a lot of it doesn't work, right? So when I say, what's the upside? It could be that people think you're great, yeah?
It just feels good to give.
Feels good to give, yeah. It feels good to you, others experience you in that way, but how does it shoot you in the foot, Claudia?
Well, because I then have just way too much on my plate. And
yeah. And potentially can't deliver all of what you need to be able to deliver, right? Or deliver it in the way you want to, or perhaps you can deliver it, but the cost for you is huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, super, thank you. There's somebody else who was ready to go. One of the gents I could hear early on saying, I've got one.
I was gonna pipe up with one. I guess you made me think of it referencing sort of home life, because I'm better at it these days, but certainly one thing I always got told off for is if someone's trying to vent and explain a situation, you don't always need to try and give them a solution straight away.
Nice.
Often people want to talk and just be heard and sort of get it off their chest. And if you're sitting there saying, oh, maybe just do this, or you should have done that, or this would have been better, like definitely doesn't go down well. I guess that applies in work as well, in different ways, but
yeah, jumping into fixing, Mr. Fix-It. And afterwards you might be able to realize, oh gosh, there I go again, right? So the desire to kind of help and be useful gets in the way of actually what the person really needs, which is just to share what is going on. And if you think about the upside of that, in David's case, but I don't think it's unique to David, is the upside of jumping in and fixing it is that I can feel useful, because we generally don't feel very useful when we're just listening. It doesn't feel like it's a very active thing, right? So it meets our own need to feel useful by jumping in and offering ideas, but actually gets in the way of what's needed. So that's a lovely share, David. Thank you. Let's build on that.
I've got one that's probably, oh, sorry.
Go on, Amanda.
No, you go, Amanda. That's fine.
I've got one that's almost a little bit linked to David's, in that I like to think of myself as efficient, and I like just keeping things moving relatively quickly. But sometimes I have a tendency to I feel like I need to make a decision really quickly, and then and I was in quite a contentious meeting the other day, and we had a senior person from Transport and Main Roads there. She had a really nice manner of actually saying, we take that on board and we're going to consider that, and it was, she just parked it, but gave herself the ability to have a think about it. Lovely. And then come back with a considered response. And so, yeah, I think I can do better. I almost see it as a way of sort of deflecting or not being able to answer the question, where it's not really that at all. You just need to give yourself some time to actually make the right decision or consider all options.
Yeah. So the pressure to resolve now and take action, come to conclusion, get closure. The upside obviously is the efficiency. And when that's done for things that are just about efficiency, that's a great gift. But the shadow side is not giving yourself or others the space to actually process what can't be resolved with the click of a button. Yeah, lovely. Yeah. Lovely. Continuing.
Mine kind of leads on a little bit from both David's and Amanda's. So I've noticed in myself a tendency to also respond quite quickly to solutions. And it's something I've been working on for a number of years since I first became aware of it in my behavior. And I think it stems from needing to sometimes prove my worth in a meeting and stuff like that. If you're in there with a lot of very senior, knowledgeable people, like sometimes you need to feel like you've got to show that you know what you're talking about and stuff. Yeah. So you tend to respond very quickly before taking the time to think. And one of the things I've really noticed is the people I look up to in the room who can kind of control a meeting room and stuff like that are not the ones talking the most. They're not the ones giving the fastest responses. They're the ones sitting there taking the information in. And then typically they're the ones that have the last word because they have some really good, insightful, knowledgeable ideas. And everyone's like, oh, that's really impressive sort of thing. So it's around controlling how my inner urge to respond quickly and be the first one to get an idea.
Maybe. Yeah, might be the need to look competent, to show I've got this in hand, and again we can see with all of these we can see the upside, but when those things drive us, just like you said, Adam, it gets in the way of us actually being able to press a pause button, give ourselves time to think through things, and like you observed, then share insights that really can move the room. Yeah. So beautiful examples you're sharing. Let's hear some more. Angus?
I've got one, it's a bit different to that, and it's probably related to more so to not having the difficult conversations, whether it be with clients or staff members. So it's probably easier just to go with the flow. But then sometimes that means in the longer term, projects might not have the best outcome.
Yeah. So is it about going with the flow and keeping things nice?
Yeah, I think so. I don't like conflict.
Yeah, so let's go. So keeping things nice. And again, we can see the upside, right? But then the downside is when that drives us is it stops us actually from having the conversations that really get that movement. Yeah. So the issue for all of us is not that we won't have them. We're going to talk in a minute. The issue here is having our self-awareness around them, right? So you guys are demonstrating excellent self-awareness as we move through this. Let me keep moving. I'd like to hear from everybody. Yes, Mitchell.
Yeah, it's sort of off the back of what Angus was saying there was, say I've got half a dozen things on my plate. I always find myself gravitating towards the ones that are easier or are familiar within my wheelhouse, and it's always that one issue that, you know, maybe I'm a little bit unfamiliar with, or it requires an uncomfortable conversation, and then it gets, you know, put to the bottom of the list, and then, you know, you find it's a week later, and all of a sudden it snowballed to be a much bigger issue.
Yeah, and does it also prey on the back of your mind that it's actually still sitting there?
Oh yeah, in your head it becomes a lot worse than, you know, like Angus said, having the conversation, doing something that you're unfamiliar with.
So procrastinating what could be unpleasant or what's unfamiliar, or what I don't feel I kind of can in a natural way. And the downside of that, both it keeps niggling away, but potentially becomes actually bigger than if I dealt with it in the moment. Yeah, great one, Mitchell.
I think I
I'll jump
can
in.
relate to that one that Mitch was saying.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay, go on, Leanne.
Yeah, I seem to have a hard time admitting to people involved in a project that I'm on when I'm struggling, and I just try to solve it myself first. And instead of just, you know, taking it to someone else, getting other people on it, that sort of thing, I try to work it out myself, which delays the problem getting solved if I'm struggling.
And probably stresses you as well, right?
Yeah, too overwhelmed with things, and then, you know, and, you know, sometimes you do solve it on your own, but when the times when you have to give it a certain time frame to say, okay, I need to go to someone else.
And what's the difficulty in that? Is it around appearing like you don't have it together? Is it about not wanting to be vulnerable? Is it what it might look like to others if you're not 100% competent on everything? What's behind it, Leanne?
Yeah, I think it's just, you know, wanting to bring your problem solving, your best self to the job, and do what you can to solve it, and not wanting to seem incompetent.
Yeah. So maybe the big shooting myself in the foot is associating knowing it all with competence. Because it's interesting, as we move into leadership, there's most things we won't know, right?
No, and that's what I'm learning as I go along in the last year or so, working on larger programs and stuff, that it's best to speak up right away, because there's people willing to help if they know that you're struggling.
Exactly, and it also models for others, I think, you know, the value and importance of that. Thanks, Leanne. Okay, others?
I'll jump in next. I would have said at the start of this a lot of common themes that people have said in terms of wanting to make a decision too quickly, and not wanting to say no, to avoid having difficult conversations, I suppose. But one thing that I'm noticing as I've listened to everyone else is that I seem to be okay with that on the side of with colleagues and with peers at GHD. It's purely in a client setting that I struggle with that. If someone asks me to do a project and I don't have time to do it, I won't always say no, because I might want to do it. But if I don't want to do it and don't have the time, I've gotten a lot better at pushing back on that. But if a client asks for something that I know is unreasonable, I feel compelled to give them a yes, even if it's not going to, even if it's going to cause more discomfort down the track, I think.
Yes, that's a really great one. It's a great one because you can distinguish in certain settings it's not an issue at all. But there, in that client setting, it's almost that being paralyzed, to access what you know is the right thing to say, with all of the consequence. Yeah, good.
Absolutely.
Justine, have we heard from you?
No, I can go. I guess mine's quite similar to what Adam and Amanda were saying, but I know it definitely goes up a notch whenever I'm in like a stressed environment. So if I'm under a lot of work, or, you know, you're having those tough conversations with clients, or maybe you're not even prepared for a meeting as much as you'd like to be. I try to rush decisions. I ramble a lot, and it becomes, I guess, a little bit unprofessional. So I think I definitely need to, slow down my pace, think, and even wait until the next day to respond to a client email or phone call, really, to wrap my head around it a bit more. And I know I'm trying to work on that throughout this course.
Super, really good. Tim?
Yeah, look, I think I'm very much in the boat of procrastinating to deal with big issues, definitely mostly in the client space. I think, yeah, I can usually have a proper conversation with anyone in the team or something like that, or anyone in the company. But I think, yeah, I think it's very much the same as Kelsey. And Leanne, like I try and solve it myself, and then I just get further and further behind and stress myself out.
And dig yourself into the hole. Yeah. Thanks, Tim.
Yeah.
Have we missed anybody else? John, did you share yours?
No, I haven't shared mine, but
kind of hard for me on the screen. I'm trying to keep a track of everybody. So make sure you keep each other honest if I miss. Thanks, John.
That's okay. Look, mine was very similar to Claudia. I struggle to say no. I really, I mean, you know, it's just one of those things. It's like you don't want to seem like you're sort of sitting around doing nothing, but at the same time, you are, and you're really busy, and you know you want to sort of take on any new opportunity that comes along. You want to be involved in part of it, but you know, if you sort of, you know, if you're not delivering a quality product at the end of the day, then there's probably not much point in taking on too much that you can chew.
You know, that's the logic, isn't it? You know, we all know, and you'll know that it'll compromise, but it's in that moment. The shooting in the foot is, despite what we know, we actually do something and we want to kick ourselves afterwards, so to speak. Yeah. Shelley, did you share your one?
No, I haven't yet. Mine is similar to, well, a lot of what everyone's been saying, but also that kind of the not saying no thing. You know, I'm a good starter and then want to do everything, and then I just have this list of things, and instead of doing a few things well, I do a whole lot of things
nice
badly.
That's a different one, isn't
and
it?
I just
Embracing
get more and more stressed about it. Yeah.
So embracing lots of things, but then not completing them. Yeah.
Yes.
Great. Yeah. Thank you. Jackie, did I get yours?
No, you didn't. So mine is probably that. So I can get, when things aren't going super well, I can get very stressed, and I can find it really difficult to work in a team, and find it easier to just do things on my own, because it's easier to be in control, to make sure that the outcome's there, and then I get really burned out and tired.
Super aware one. So it's quite easy to kind of go same as everybody else, but actually I think that's a really good one. Withdrawing, going into myself, and then with all the consequent. So it gives me something, it gives me the relief, but actually then costs a whole lot. Yeah, lovely. Joanne, did I get yours?
Hey Paula, so mine is that I get too much into the detail, and I like that everything has to be perfect. So whether it's just an email or whether it's a proposal or a report, which means that I do spend a lot of time making sure that it's all clean, all edited, and quality product. So yeah, that's how I shoot myself. And when I get stressed out, I just ruminate a lot and just don't sleep.
Right. So getting into the detail, then taking it on, then the ruminating, and then the on-flow effect. Thank you. Did I miss anybody?
Paula, it's Marcia.
Thank you, Marcia.
Mine relates to everything that's been said already, but delegation specifically. Often I'll just get something that I think, oh, I can just quickly do this and it'll be done.
Yes.
And then it'll explode into this bigger issue, and wish that I had have and should have at the beginning delegated it to someone else.
Yeah, and given it to where it should have belonged, so you can actually do your work.
Yes.
So fantastic. So guys, what we've been doing there is really two things. One, connecting in with your level of self-awareness, right? So the interest isn't really, do any of you shoot yourselves in the foot, because we all do in multiple ways. But from a leadership point of view, it's really important to have an awareness. What is it about me that can get in the way? Yeah. So that's the first one. The second one we're going to look at is hot buttons. Now, you've done a little bit of work, I think, with Lizzie, have you, and your emotional intelligence about triggers, hot buttons. But a hot button is something that generate such an intense reaction in us that the reaction is usually stronger than actually the event itself. And it's often something that comes from a deeply held value. And when we see that value contravened, we have a much stronger reaction than an irritation and a much deeper one. So for example, for myself, for me, a real trigger and a hot button is when I encounter people I see as lazy. It really, really annoys me. You know, sometimes I'll see clients or people in clients' organization, and I'll go, they are just on such a good wicket. They're doing very, very little, and they're just turning up every day. And even worse, the trigger will be for me when they look like they're being officious and they're not, right? So it's a double whammy when I see them trying to pull it off. But it also extends to even in my own home. You know, if I see, you know, my 15-year-old is a clever kid who likes to get away with doing as little as possible under lots of conditions. And so when he has fast lines or lies to cover himself up, just as a parent, I have to be super careful within myself because my reaction is actually very, very intense around how could you be like that? And so for me, I think that hot button and trigger came up actually from my upbringing. I grew up in Ireland, and so there was always this idea of nothing for nothing, and you put in to get out, and it's about hard work. And so while the value is a really great one to have, when it is so deeply entrenched that it causes a very intense reaction, then it can actually be counterproductive, right? Not the value itself, but the way in which I hold it, yeah? So in this case, it has to be others need to always be working hard, right? But you can see the limitation of that thinking, both for myself and actually the limitations it places on other people as well. So we're going to start, if I can, I might just so I can follow my route here. Tim, are you able to identify a hot button for you? What really sets you off, bugs you to an extreme?
I think when people think like I don't know when I think people think that I'm dumb.
Can't hear you, Tim. Sorry, you're dropping in and out.
Angry and sorry, can you hear me now?
You're still in and out a bit. Yeah.
Let me try it. I think when people think I'm dumb, I get really stressed out and it really pisses me off. And I try and respond really quickly and I freak out a bit. And and that's sometimes when I don't do stuff efficiently or I try and do stuff myself, going back to how I put my foot in it as well.
So you said when people what? When they do what?
When I think that they think that I'm stupid or I can't solve the problem or something like that.
Got you. When they're looking down on you in some way, that sends you into an intense reaction. Yeah, I got it. Thanks, Tim. I got it.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Marcia, do you have a hot button?
I think my hot button is I'm very action orientated. Like I want to kind of progress and get to an outcome through the right channels, but I can get frustrated when if I'm in a meeting that there's too much kind of discussion on the the actual aspect or the how or the why and sometimes I'm just like let's just move forward.
Now, do you just get frustrated or you get triggered? Because I want everybody to understand the difference between lots of things will irritate us or potentially frustrate us.
What's triggered?
It's triggered. So it's a more intense reaction. Like it makes your blood boil. Internally you seethe, or maybe externally you lose it, right? Like a hot button is where it takes over us. An irritant is that really bugs me.
Yeah.
But I can get on with it. So it's helpful just for us to work out. So would you say it's an irritant or a hot button?
It probably sits somewhere in between.
Okay, so we'll come back to you. Let's keep going to you, Jackie. Do you have something that completely really triggers you badly?
Yes. I get really frustrated when I don't think people are paying attention to detail.
Thank you.
And that results in poor quality.
Okay, so I get the logical part of that, but does it, when you say I get frustrated, does it make your blood boil?
It can, when things are given to me at the last minute.
And what does that look like within you when your blood boils?
I can be mean to people, I guess. I don't know. Yeah. So I'm kind of getting at the rawness, right? It can bring out a nastiness. It can bring out a thing that's not the normal you or I. This is the thing, right? And so it cuts so deeply that at least in certain situations, I become somebody who other than who I am normally. Yeah. Does that fit, Jackie? Yeah, great. Billy, do you have something that completely sets you off?
Hot button. I suppose it's when someone keeps kind of coming at you, kind of attacking. I sometimes have a tendency to retaliate rather than diffuse that situation.
And what does retaliate look like? What does retaliate look like?
It's just I will escalate that, and so if it's an argument, instead of backing down, I will raise it one, and it keeps going until I don't know,
Got you. So you bring it on to me, and you're going to see quite an intense.
It doesn't happen often.
No.
But, when it does, it's almost like you have no control over it, and
exactly.
You just lose it.
I like what Shelley is saying, guys, because in some of the examples you've been sharing, it's not about being right or wrong, but you are sharing kind of quite moderate things that'll bug you. And so this piece is actually going beyond things that bug me and things that actually expose the darker side of me. Yeah. So Shelley's there saying day to day, that's not who I am, but you catch me in that and you will see, I triggered, or Jackie, you'll see the nasty side when that button is pressed under certain situations. Adam, what about for you?
This was actually one of the things to work on for me from the emotional intelligence piece, was that self-awareness and on my hot buttons. So probably the big one for me that's a bit irrational is my complete irrational frustration and anger at the request for rework. Like if I've just spent a couple of weeks doing an assessment and the client turns back around and goes, oh, well, we'll just change this little bit, not realizing that you're back to the drawing board and you're probably 2 weeks of rework or sort of thing. And a lot of the time it doesn't matter, like as long as they're working with the schedule or they're agreeing to pay, it shouldn't be a big deal. But like I literally normally have to like take a step back and take big deep breaths. Otherwise I'm just going to
just go and go, what moron are you? You just come along and you ask us to do this piece of work, assuming that you think we've got some expertise, and now you just want to titillate and play around the edges. So I love the word you said there, the irrational, right? So that's a very strong emotive word. When I encounter such dumb irrationality, I encounter this aspect of myself. That's a nice indication that we're triggered. Yeah. And of course, it's not to suggest there's not irrationality, but let's say I'm not hooked in by that. I go, well, that's a bit of a waste. But anyway, I guess, and so I might think it's dumb and I might be a bit irritated, but it doesn't control me. So that really helped us, Adam. Mitchell?
The initial one I thought of, but it's probably more only a frustration, was I guess if people half-ass something, if you get a deliverable or you receive something that you can just see no one's put effort into, but like what you're saying before, that's probably more just a frustration. It's not probably a complete trigger.
Yeah, whereas for me, it's a trigger. For me, I'd be going like, what planet are you on? You give up this dog's dinner, take it away. Yeah, so what's one for you then? What does set you off?
Yeah, the one I just thought of before was if someone's challenging your decision or trying to undermine your decision, like a lot of site work, I make a call and it's just, and then when I'm not confrontational about it, it's just something that I guess exists within me of just, yeah, people just challenging or trying to undermine, yeah, calls I make.
That's a good one. That's a good one that I've heard many times. Yeah. So when I feel undermined, either directly or in a white ant way, it really triggers an intense reaction within me. Yeah, great. David?
Yeah, I think the one that I thought of, and I guess I think it is a hot button. It's not so much that it makes me mad or angry, but something that makes me very sort of stressed or anxious is when I find myself in a position where I feel sort of ill prepared for something, or if I'm unfamiliar with a situation and I feel like it could then end badly, or that I suppose in particular, it'll end badly, or if I'll look very unprepared to people that I guess and in a situation where I would expect myself to be more prepared. And sometimes that's people put you in that situation, or circumstances change, or sometimes you just are unprepared, but then it gets sort of called out. I think I have a real sort of fight or flight response to that, and I panic a lot, and just then I'm not really responding to it in a rational way where here's the situation, it can be addressed.
Yeah.
I just kind of freak out and think of the worst case scenario, and that's not very helpful.
Yeah, I like that fight or flight piece, that the not appearing to be prepared engenders such an intense reaction. Yeah, great. Claudia?
Yeah, for me, it's when people are being unkind. It's almost like a physical reaction.
Yes.
And if somebody's being mean to somebody, I just cannot stand, and it sort of taints the way I look at that person. It's not like I can let it go.
Yes.
So forever and a day, I'm like, no, but you are just
yeah, you're mean. You're nasty.
Mean. And sometimes I think, you know what, maybe it was just that space and time, but deep down, I just can't let go of it.
Yes. Yes. I think that's another characteristic of being triggered, not being able to let go, right? And so we are spending quite a bit of time on this because it's hugely important for us to be aware of both the kind of the patterns in ourselves that can shoot us in the foot, but also the events that can trigger us. And I'm going to ask you in a minute why is this piece so significant to your leadership? Yeah, the awareness of it. Justine, what's your one?
Similar to Claudia, if I
Okay.
see someone being rude or disrespectful, I like see red, and I don't so much hold a grudge, but I will definitely give them a piece of my mind at the time. And it's probably, I guess it's dependent on what I view as maybe rude, which maybe not everyone would decide is rude.
Yeah. And does it evoke in you a reaction that afterwards you think was far more intense than the situation warranted at that moment in time?
Sometimes like I've definitely yelled at strangers a few times. But yeah, sometimes I think, they should have been told off for how they behave. But other times, then definitely I can probably, rising to their level is not the best.
Well, I think just so we can teach you what a trigger does. Usually what a trigger will do is have us respond far more significantly than the situation actually would require if we were neutral about it. Yeah, that's why I was just asking you that. Kelsey?
I am struggling to think of something that really makes my blood boil. I think I'm going to have to maybe ask some people in my life about that. Like there are small things that get me frustrated, but I don't know that I really see red about anything that I can think of. But one thing that I don't know if this counts as a hot button, but if I'm in a situation where I'm trying to get my point across and I feel like I've said it 6 different ways and the person's still not understanding what I'm trying to say, I'll just start crying. And I wish I could not do that because to me, I find that a very childish response, but I physically can't help it.
Yeah, no, I think that's a trigger. That's a trigger. It evokes a response that is beyond rational in your own mind. Yeah, I think that totally fits. Joanna?
I've had a very strong response recently when there was a big problem on the job. And when I realized it, I had tunnel vision. My heart was gonna jump out of my body. Sit down and calm myself down.
You're just cutting in and out, Joanna. Sorry, we're only
Oh,
hearing.
sorry. Yeah, I sort of had a panic attack. Part of my reaction.
Yeah, you're sharing something really helpful, but we're not hearing it, Joanna. Sorry.
Why?
That's better.
So, yeah, I'm just saying that problem. So my reaction was so big.
Yeah, sorry, Joanna, it's going. But I think what you were saying is having this very strong reaction, almost like a panic attack when the job wasn't done. Was that correctly? An important job. And so,
yes.
yeah. And
Hear me now?
Yeah, exactly. And it elicits a very intense reaction. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, and it all comes down to the reason being that, as I was saying before, that I like everything to be perfect and well done. And when the situation was out of my control,
yes,
I sort of lost it.
Yes. That's a really good self-awareness. Yeah, that being out of control can trigger. It's like there's somebody else who said when they don't feel they've got it together, it can really elicit that very intense response. Leanne?
Oh, there we go. I think for me, it's something I realized recently is that it's when people maybe don't take ownership or show commitment to something that I care about. But it can also be when I see it from the outside looking in on other people's situations as well. If people just don't take that ownership and then it has to fall back on the person that cares more, that really frustrates me. And I've only really noticed that through conversations I've had recently. So it is a hot button, but then I can kind of talk myself out of it because I can also sympathize with people's different situations. You know, they have other things going on in their lives. So maybe this isn't the most important thing that they want to care about. But when I see it really negatively impacts other people, that's what bothers me, and they don't have that awareness.
Yeah, thanks, Leanne. Angus?
Mine was actually very similar to Leanne's about taking ownership of work and also mistakes in work or quality. And I suppose the bit that triggers me about it is when it results in work or rework for someone else or me, particularly me, if triggers. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Angus. John?
Yeah, Adam sort of hit the nail on the head on that one. It was just around design changes or any sort of change. I guess it's not so much the change that's I guess I see as the problem. As you know, I'm trying to sort of change the way I do things and adapt and develop things that'll help me adapt to that change. But it's when the deliverable, the deadline doesn't change as a result. It's just, it's made to seem like it's a small and insignificant thing. And it's, it doesn't, it's like, well, what's the issue? Why can't you get that done in the same amount of time? It's just,
this assumption that something significant should be just shouldn't actually throw you about at all. Yeah, that's the trigger.
I can feel myself getting triggered just talking about it. I've got to get up and walk away from the situation and sort of take myself away and completely remove myself before I sort of come back and tackle it.
Yeah, super. Thanks, John. And Amanda?
People who take all the credit for something that's clearly involved others.
Thank you.
That drives me bonkers.
Yes. And will elicit a strong reaction, whether it's shown to the world or not. By the way, we don't always show to others what's going on inside us, but it really derails us within. Thanks, guys. So we spent a fair bit of time on that because it's important. What, you know, the last year we talked about really as leaders, we can be on the balcony and notice what's going on. But actually, we have to be able to be on the balcony and notice ourselves, because we are always inevitably going to be part in this leadership stuff of what's occurring in the system. And so effective leadership is not about having no hot buttons, and it's not about being so perfect that we never shoot ourselves in the foot. Not at all. It is, though, about having the self-awareness and being able to catch ourselves. So if I can, in that moment, know I'm being triggered, I can then press the pause button and say, if I react out of this, it's not going to be very nice. I may still want to have a challenging conversation, in this case, let's say with my 15-year-old kid, but I want to make sure when I'm having the conversation, I'm not contaminating it with my hot buttons, but I'm actually able to have that perspective. Like, John, when you said you walk away, you get some distance, right? You guys might still want to go back to the client and renegotiate the fact that, yes, it seems like a minor thing, client, but actually it is going to take another 14 hours of work. So I just need to level with you around that. Now, if I can do that in a way that I'm not triggered, it's going to be a far more effective conversation. Yeah. So in your jigsaw, do you all have access to your jigsaw that you were given as part of your toolkit here? You should have a jigsaw. Do you have one? Yeah, great. Yes, you're showing it, Jackie. That's it. Yes. So can you see in your jigsaw that there is a spot there for my hot buttons and what triggers me and how I shoot myself in the foot? Could you just jot down your insights about yourself in there, because this becomes part of your reflection guide?
Sorry, what page is the jigsaw on? I see it.
It's a handout, John. Yeah, exactly.
All
That's
right.
it.
Yeah.
That's it. Okay, thank you. So now what we're going to do is we're going to move to the next section, which is called the skills of positioning. And so if we have a look at this screen, you're going to see that there are what we call three positions we can adopt. So let me talk a little bit about what we mean by the first position. And I'm going to do that by asking, if I can I just ask, Leanne, can you just tell me a little bit about what's happened, what's been going on for you before you come into the session this morning?
I think today has actually been a good day for me. Is that what you're looking for? Like my
just tell me a few bit. Just tell me a little bit about it so far.
I think I am feeling good at where I'm at in some projects, and not super slammed on deliverables this week, so have a bit more time to catch up on some things that I've put on the back burner. So I'm feeling grateful for that.
Great. So what Leanne has just done is demonstrated first position. So what she shared is from her map of the world, what today has been like, what's occurred, what's not occurred. And so she has been communicating from her perspective about a matter that we asked. Yeah. So when is it that leaders need to be able to move into, Justine, first position communication like that? In other words, sharing what it is that you're thinking and feeling and your reactions and views about things.
From a team leader perspective?
Yeah, any leader. When are the situations that require first position communication?
I guess, well, it's trying to explain what you need from your team. So you might be saying you're feeling this, you really need them to help either like step up or maybe take some of the load from other people.
Yeah.
It helps. It's just better open communication. Everyone's working towards the same goal at the end.
Everybody knows what matters to you. So you may need to share a direction, get people on board, let people know what you're thinking and feeling. And so you need to be able to use a first position communication. Absolutely. Adam, what's the downside of a first position communication?
Sorry, I had to get myself off mute there. I guess the downside is it's very inward focused from what I can see. Like obviously it's, you know, what am I feeling? What are my views and stuff like that? While it might be better to potentially see things from other people's perspective or to try take a bit more of a bigger picture approach.
Super. So if Leanne just kept going on talking about her morning for the rest of the session, we might kind of go, well, thanks, Leanne, but it's not all about you. We've all had days as well, right? I'm just exaggerating, right? So the first position has an upside and a downside, right? And so from a leadership point of view, it's about being able to understand, when do I need to bring the first position and when do I need to switch to something else? That's exactly right. Have you ever met leaders who spent too much time in first position? It was all about what they were thinking, feeling, directing, doing, yeah?
Yep.
And what's the impact?
Could you say that they're not really leaders if they're doing that?
Nice one. You might say they're one of too many followers, and by that definition, no, that's right. Have you ever met people in a hierarchical role who did a lot of that? Maybe would have been a better question. Yeah. So let's go to second position then. So second position is where we are having a dialogue, about what is going on. And so it is the art around, if, let me just demonstrate it with Leanne. So Leanne, today was a pretty good day for you. What do you reckon made it such a good day?
For me, I got to interact with some teammates this morning and had some good conversations. And yeah, I'm enjoying what I'm doing today.
Great. And would you say that interacting with team members is important for you in terms of just keeping you engaged and feeling upbeat?
Yeah, I certainly don't need to, I can work pretty well on my own at home, not talking to people, but I think that's when you start to feel engaged, is when you speak to other people and can relate to each other.
Yeah, awesome. And so I heard you saying you had some really good conversations. So I might, guys, if I wanted to continue this, explore with Leanne what some of those good conversations were. So what are the skills we need to use in second position communication then, Amanda?
There's just a shift in mindset, I think, about it's not all about you. You're looking, I'm thinking of myself at the moment in an acting team lead role, is being able to have a different hat on. Like this morning we went to a new client meeting and we've been given a bucket of work, and we really need to give it to someone that's needs the utilisation more than what I do. So I suppose I'm just thinking a bigger perspective, I think, about just being able to share.
Exactly. And so in my interaction with Leanne, what's required for us to have a good second position interaction? What are the skills that need to underpin that for me in talking with Leanne? Anybody?
Active listening.
Active listening, not just waiting for her to finish to say my next bit, but building my next question based upon what she has shared, and potentially noticing her reactions, So for example, when I said something like, so it sounds like engaging with people is really key, just noticing Leanne's reactions where she said, well, it's not like I can't be on my own. I can. there is something that comes up when you come together with others, right? So the art of that second position is about deeply listening, connecting, noticing the other person, and having the questions build on what's been said, not just kind of two people talking in parallel. And then there is a third position. And the third position is from that balcony or the helicopter. And this is about noticing how are we working together as a group, what's going on, what are some of the patterns that we are seeing. So if I was just following in my conversation with Leanne, and I now move into third position, I might be saying, so it's interesting, what I'm hearing is that today for you seems to have been particularly good. And that seems to have circled around having had some nice interactions with team members and some really useful conversations. What do you think it is within that is most important for you, Leanne?
I think having the time to refresh is what's been most important, and maybe speak to people about not just project related things and connect with people a bit more.
Great. So if we take a balcony thing on what Leanne has just said, is that, so I might say something like, so I guess that example of this morning is illustrative of something really important, which is how do we as leaders have some oasis times in between the hard work of projects where we can refresh, where we can reconnect, and we can kind of consolidate that connection. Yeah. And then I might say something like, and we could say this to all of us actually, how important is that for the rest of us on this call too? This chance to have an oasis in between the pressure of projects. You know, I might say how many of you can connect with what Leanne has just shared. What out of what Leanne has said resonates with your own personal experience? So guys, thanks Leanne for helping me with that. So the idea here is that we need to be able to be clear about the first position, second position, third position. As leaders, we need to have agility to be able to move between all three. The hardest is usually the third position, which is taking that balcony view and noticing the patterns of what's come up in the conversation, and then being able to share those patterns with the team and having the team to be able to notice that. So if you were my team, you know, that would have been a nice example. Leanne shares that. I pick up from a balcony about the way oasis moment, and I say to everybody else on the call, how do others connect with what Leanne has just shared? And that question, that third position question, might be enough to actually help everybody to get some movement. Yeah. So that's a really important skill set that we'll be doing some more work on. So the ability to swap between the three is really important. And this ability to get into third position is especially important. This last point there on the slide goes back to in session number 1, when I kept saying, what are you noticing? What are you noticing is that helicopter third position view. So let's just take a moment and let's go back to your example that you did in session number 1. Can you take that example out where I asked you to think about a workplace situation that required both leadership and management? Can you just take that out, please? And what we're going to do is we're just going to take just about 7 minutes now in our small group to take one of those case studies, please, and to be able to have just a 5-minute conversation about it. So I'm going to put you into groups of 3. We will take one person's case study. we'll ask them just to describe it using the first position, first of all. Then we'll ask one of the people in the group of 3 to do some second position conversation with the person about their situation. And then see if you're able to also get into the third position, which is noticing on the balcony, what are some of the themes and the patterns coming up in that case study. So I'll just, in a moment, put you into breakout groups. We'll make them different from last time. So we'll break up into 5 breakout rooms. And we're going to choose just one of the case studies from the last day, from session number 1, and just have a little bit of a conversation around it. One person sharing the case study, the other person doing like I did with Leanne, having a bit of a dialogue, practicing second and third position. And the third person is going to be an observer. And the observer, your job is to start to notice examples of first position, second position, and third position in the conversation. So I'm just going to open the rooms now.
Fading in and out, Joanna, and I'm on mute while I'm talking, so that's not helpful.
I think so. We got the situation. The sound was a bit iffy, but you know, I think we all asked, did a lot of the second in particular, like what did you think would happen? And you know, and then we did spend a lot of time also sort of sharing, like, how do different people react, and maybe why do they react that way, and is it just me that behaves that way, or do we all do it? And you know, some people it doesn't seem to affect them as much when things go wrong, whereas others of us sort of take it personally and said, you know, as we discussed, there's sort of that sick feeling in your stomach, like, but we're all human, and at the end of the day, it's just a mistake.
So you engaged in the second position.
Yep.
And then are you now just sharing with me in that last bit some examples of third position where you were able to get up on the helicopter and say, what are we noticing here? What is it that has some people get triggered, others not? How common experience is this for all of us? Yeah?
Yep.
Super, super, that's great. Let's hear from some of the other groups. Angus, your group.
Yeah, so Kelsey took notes on ours. So Leanne and I had a conversation. Her notes were that we spend a lot of time in the first first skill and the third, and not so much time in the second.
Yeah, that's interesting. So the person who was describing this situation did a lot of the talking, yeah? That's what you mean by in first?
Yeah, that was Leanne. And then
that was Leanne. But then Leanne was able to get up on the balcony and start to notice some of the patterns. Is that what you're saying, Angus?
I would say they probably spent a lot of time in the third, and even in Leanne's like first person reflection at the start, it was more about the group rather than how she was feeling and how like she could relate it back to the group. So jumping to third very quickly rather than spending more time in first and second, which we thought was good, but then also sometimes maybe having that inward reflection would be a bit longer on the inward reflection. It'd be good too.
Well, you raise an interesting question. How do you know it was third if Leanne was talking in first? I mean, it's an interesting one you raised the point on, right? So if I start telling you, I don't know, about something that's happened, let's say in my client scenario, and I then say, so I think the key patterns there were X, Y, or Z. It is an interesting question as to whether that's a third position or whether I'm still sharing my view. Yeah, I don't have an answer, but it's a good question to actually ask. But what you were noticing here, because this is all learning, is that there can be a power in the second position. And through the dialogue, we can start to see it for what it really is. And maybe that enriches the third position. Maybe the third position is richer through conversation. I don't know. Yeah. Adam?
So we had a good conversation. Tim was in the first position explaining his challenge, with Justine in the essentially listening and taking up that second position role. I was having technical challenges, so I kind of came in late and ended up in the trying to focus on the third position side of things. But it was really good. I think we probably spent a fair bit of time talking on each. Like obviously, Tim had a fair bit of time in the first position explaining the challenge, which naturally put Justine in that second position role, listening and trying to undertake that active listening and provide a two-way conversation. And then I think the example was quite perfect because the challenge and the solution involved someone taking a balcony approach to the issue and kind of foreseeing an issue before it happened and getting ahead of it. So it was kind of that third position kind of spoke for itself, really.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. So just to be really clear, because you're going to get some homework on this from me now, I think we're clear about first position, and I think we're clear about second position. Third position, if you do it as a team leader or manager, let's say you are talking to your team, and you can, as you listen to them, maybe they're all talking about, I don't know, problems with utilization of some kind or another. And the third position is you being able to name that. I'm hearing that in the conversations, there's a lots of concern about utilization being low and people talking about how various groups are dealing with that, some helpfully and some unhelpfully. I wonder if for us is the question, how do we start to think about how we handle this challenge? So third position is where you can share an observation, test it with the group, make a hypothesis as to what perhaps is really being talked about, and then asking the group what they want to do with that. And so it would be fantastic if in this week you can pay attention to the following. So just jot this down as your homework. Just be present to any examples of where you might have shot yourself in the foot or somebody else. Maybe you can notice it in somebody else at work or at home. A pattern of behavior that comes up that actually dilutes an otherwise really effective person. Start to notice yourself or others, and were there any hot buttons, explosive patterns in yourself? It could be internally, but not shown to the world. In others, I guess you'd probably see it externally. You'd see what they were doing. Just start to notice. I can't guarantee you will or you won't see any, but start to be present. And then please get on the helicopter view, noticing first, second, and third positions. All of the meetings you're in for the next week, start to notice that. And start to notice yourself, yeah? Your movement between all three, maybe a preference you have. And it would be amazing if you could come back and share a couple of third positions just to start to develop that muscle. So how does that sound? It's a bit of an introspective week, your homework this week. Noticing, building that self-awareness and just becoming in tune, yeah, with those aspects in yourself and also in others. So we're going to wrap it up. I'm sorry we're a little bit over time, so let me let you go. I hope you've got some insights from today, and I really look forward to seeing you next week when we're going to talk about the art of influencing, and we're going to look at feedback and disclosure and how they make a big difference as well. So have a wonderful week, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you, Paula.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Paula.
Paula.
Bye.
Thanks. Yeah.
Bye-bye.